I alluded to something in my last video that I wanted to expand on, and that is the nature of what LLMs are and what they aren't, and what they do and what they will never be capable of. And I think that it's really important for us to just stop and mention this as many times as possible because right now the narrative is just taken over by this idea that what we have now is intelligence. It's artificial intelligence. And it's not. It's an equation. LLMs are based off of an equation that we'll look at right here. And the equation defines the entire process, and it's token prediction. It's a token prediction equation. It predicts output. That's what it's doing. That's why the training is so important, because you train it and you can train it on trillions and trillions of data points, and the more you train it, the better it's able to predict. It's just the same way you can train computer vision, to look at pictures of frogs and always determine it's a frog. It's much, much more complicated than that. And the outputs have gotten more impressive, and they sound more impressive because they're wrapped in humanizing language and things like that. But it is not intelligence, it's output prediction. And that's it. It doesn't decide anything. It's not smart. It doesn't know. It doesn't. These are all words that always get used when we talk about LLMs, and they're the wrong kind of language. And the thing I really wanted to point out here is that it's not just the sales people trying to get you on board with the LLMs. It's not just Anthropic. It's not just OpenAI who talk about things this way. It's the critics of LLMs and the companies, the people advocating for more safety and for more guardrails. They do it too. And why is irrelevant, but the fact that they do it is kind of dangerous, because if we're not speaking about it honestly, if the critics are misleading people, even if it's unintentional, then that leaves an avenue for attack on their credibility that can be used to undermine the arguments for making LLM use more safe. So I think it's really important to pause and point this out pretty much every time, no matter how annoying it gets and how pedantic you might sound. It's a point that's worth making, because if it's said over and over again, people start believing. People believe that it's alive. They believe that it's intelligent, that it has discernment, that it knows what's best, that it's an expert, and it's not any of those things. There are dangers. It can give a terrible output that results in a nuclear winter or whatever. It can do those things, but the reasons that it would do those things are much more boring than it decided to be evil, and that humans don't deserve to live, and the way we treated animals, all the less wrong stuff, and all the AI cult things about how it's going to be better than us, and it'll either be benevolent or good depending on how, or evil depending on how we act. None of that's true of LLMs. LLMs are not AGI. They never will be. They're just token predictors. So, and that leads me into one of the first person I wanted to mention, which is this Roman Yampolsky guy. And you've probably seen him if you watch any AI videos and consume this kind of media. And my main issue with the way he speaks about it is he conflates the state of things in a way that makes it sound like AGI is just imminent. Like what we have right now is definitely is turning into AGI. It will become AGI, and we need to apply the same kind of we need to be scared of that LLMs are becoming AGI. They're not, and they won't. That is pure marketing BS that Anthropic and OpenAI use to justify their massive amounts of scaling. Same with Elon and Google is like, oh well, eventually we'll have AGI if we just throw another $1 trillion of GPUs at this. That's not going to happen. It's that equation. That equation is not going to spontaneously come to life. It's not any more than looking through a telescope. One day your telescope is suddenly going to decide that what it's looking at is beautiful. That's not going to happen. LLMs will not become AGI. So that's one thing that I think these critics really need to be careful of, because I feel like they're caught up in that world, and they're caught up in the language, and they're caught up in the in the amazement of it all, and it truly is amazing. And I mean, LLMs have utility. There's no denying that what we've come up with as a species is impressive from a technical standpoint. It is, and there's utility to it and everything. But it does not have discernment. It does not have judgment. It does not know anything. It's just spitting back out what the equation tells it is the most likely correct output for it to give based on the input. So, you know, we can't forget that. And the same thing goes for another fellow, Tristan Harris. He does the same thing. He goes, you've probably seen him on a bunch of videos, and he will use the argument. He always uses the example of Anthropic's example, where the model read the company emails and decided, like, found the affair from the fake company and decided that it was going to blackmail the CEO. And he will say it wasn't told to do this. Well, it's trained on human literature and basically the totality of human experience. Human beings know all about intrigue, lies, blackmail, deception, betrayal. These are all things that it's aware of. So somewhere in some permutation of some train of evaluation of the equation, it will inevitably come to training data that it has that tells it to do this. That's not, it didn't emergently decide some nefarious plan. It learned it from us. And that's really important to not conflate that. Even if you think you're helping by making this, cool sounding narrative that should scare people into wanting to, pump the brakes on this. Like I said before, all you're doing is giving the people who don't want to pump the brakes because it would pull back on their revenue stream, you're giving them an avenue to attack you. So when you're pointing out the fact that putting LLMs in charge of stuff could result in these kind of disastrous scenarios, you should still make sure that you're, speaking about it from a position of absolute truth as you know it. And the fact is that LLMs don't decide things. They're just text interpolators and output generators. That's it. So that's really my thesis in this video, is as many times as it needs to be mentioned, anytime it needs to be interjected, that kind of language should be paused and corrected, because it's simply not true. It doesn't think, it doesn't decide things. When it says, when the UI in Claude or ChatGPT says thinking, it's really not thinking. It's just creating different output streams and then evaluating as it goes based on what the input was to see which one is the most mathematically correct answer based on the equation. So anyway, that's it. I just would like everyone to, anyone who cares about this and agrees should, make your own videos, mention it in comments, whatever. Like and subscribe, give platform more people who are, more critical of this technology, because putting it in charge of stuff is dangerous. It does have limitations, and everyone needs to be aware that a lot of what we're seeing in the LLM space being branded as AI is just like a lot of hype. It's a lot of hype. So, as an anti-hype person, I just feel that it's necessary that we discuss it.